To go deep, afraid of what I may mean, afraid of my own heartbeat. It came so quietly beside me.
Thanks everyone for coming to our event today, Building Community Power, Neighborhood Organizing, Past and Future. As most of you know, this is the second event. We had a great event a couple of weeks ago that was looking more at understanding austerity. And today what we're trying to look at is different experiences of community organizing so that we can try to learn from those lessons. So the format today, roughly, once our speakers get here, is we're going to hear from our different speakers and hear about their experiences doing community organizing. We're going to move to a brief question and answer period where you can ask about their experiences, and then we're going to open it up to a discussion where we're encouraging people to reflect on these lessons and think about what we can do from here. And here come our other two people. So maybe I'll go through and and introduce the speakers just before they talk. Or I'll do it now. We have Amy Withers, who's an organizer, anti-poverty and disability justice organizer and author, who's been organizing with the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty for many years. So AJ's going to talk about that. But first I'll introduce the other folks, Nadia Edwards and Lily Baumgarten, who are here from the STOP, and they'll talk more about the STOP Community Food Center and some of their programming there and how that's going on. And Syed Hassan, who's an organizer and writer in Toronto, working with undocumented and migrant peoples, and he'll be talking about that type of community organizing. So AJ, if you could start, that'd be great.
So hi, I'm AJ and I'm from the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. Oh no, I don't want it to do that. So OCAP is an anti-poverty organization that's been organizing for over 20 years in the city mostly, but also across the province. And what we do is direct action organizing, and the way that we approach organizing is that oftentimes groups do one of two things. They work on doing casework or helping individuals get access to the things they need, which is really, really important, but also doesn't really do anything to change the structures that make it so that people don't have what they need. Or they do mass mobilizing around like big campaigns and long-term projects. And both of those things I think are really, really important. But without each other, then they're not really answering the whole picture, where you can't actually, I don't think, morally get people out into the streets to protest for a raise in social assistance rates or for housing for all if there aren't also things that you're doing to help meet people's everyday needs right now. So what OCAP does is we try and do both of those things. And one of the things we do is direct action casework, which basically is if someone's having a problem with their welfare or ODSP, which is disability, or with their landlord or their boss or whatever it is, that there's something that they need, and oftentimes there is a legal mechanism for it, not always, but oftentimes there is. But so say for welfare, you get overpayment that is or isn't correct, but the only way to fight that through the legal system is to do an appeal. Oftentimes it takes 6 months, even a year, to go through that process, and for the whole time that you're doing that, you're out the money that you would have otherwise been getting. Or say they just assess your benefits at 50 bucks a month less. And if you're on social assistance, 50 bucks a month can be make it or break it. And it, from the get-go, is not enough to survive. So having even 10 bucks extra is a really, really important thing for people. So instead of going through the legal system, what we do is we take a group of people to the welfare office or to the boss or whoever it is, and we tell them we want to have a meeting and that we're not leaving until it gets resolved. And so what we do is we just yell and make a lot of noise, and there's a lot of us, and we don't leave. And that's one kind of really simple way that we can get people what they need right now. But another thing that does is that it means that when we're in the office, we're also talking to the other people that are there. And they know, and they can see very immediately that organizing actually can win very concrete things for people in their daily lives. So the next time anyone in that office has a problem, instead of going to a lawyer, they call us, we go down to the office, we organize with them, and we're not doing it on their behalf, we're doing it with them and fighting with them to get what they need. And so that's one thing that I think has been really successful with OCAP. In some ways it's been overly successful in that with social assistance, one of their primary mandates is to keep us out of the office. So, so if we have someone that calls with a problem, the first thing we do, obviously, is not get a group of people together and go down and yell and scream, right? We send a letter, we make phone calls, and when that fails, then we go to the office. But in social assistance in Toronto, they have a policy that if you get a letter from OCAP, you deal with it. So very, very rarely do we actually have to go and actually do that kind of direct action case work, which is really great. It means that we win stuff very quickly for people. It also means that we're not talking to people in the offices the way that we would have been if we were doing as many case actions. But it's something that if you get a letter from another group, there's not necessarily a policy directive telling them to deal with it, right? But because they know that we will back it up and that we will keep fighting over and over until people get what they need, then that means that we're really successful in winning people what they need. So I don't really know what is on these slides, so I'm just going to kind of go through them and talk a bit about the history of the organization. So like I said, OCAP's been around for 20 years, and we do also mass mobilizing. We've been fighting basically for the same things for a really long time through different campaigns and in different forms, but primarily housing for all, decent, affordable, accessible housing for all, and a decent living for people. So that often means a Raise the Rates campaign for increased rates of welfare and ODSP, but it also means raising social assistance rates, or pardon me, raising the minimum wage, and working to ensure that people have what they need. And around building housing, we've fought for different things in different times, but one of the things that I think is really important is that we fight in the long term, both to build housing, to put in rent control, to make more housing affordable and accessible to people, and in the short term, ensuring that the shelter beds that we have stay. So, as some people know, OCAP did a barbecue outside of the schoolhouse shelter today. The schoolhouse shelter is the only wet shelter in the city. The shelter system is a really, really awful place to find yourself in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways is that it has really rigid rules. And so in this particular shelter, the fact that people are allowed to access alcohol, and oftentimes the folks that are there are people who have been drinking every day for 20, 30 years, and it actually would be a really horrible thing for people to just stop drinking. And people choose to sleep on the streets rather than to go into a shelter system where they're going to be cut off of alcohol cold turkey, have seizures, have any number of potentially deadly health implications because of that. So we've been fighting to keep that particular shelter open. The city has said that They're going to be housing the people that are there. One of the things I think a lot of people think about shelters is that they only need to, if they're closing a shelter, they only need to house the people that are there. But the reality is there's always a constant shift in who needs shelter and who's there, and all of the people that need that shelter tomorrow or next week or in 3 years, all of those beds will be gone. So that's one thing that, that we've been fighting for, and we use a variety of different tactics in a lot of the different work that we do. So right now it's barbecues. We've also gone to City Hall and done deputations around it. We've also gone to City Hall and yelled a lot about it. And we do different tactics that we think will work. And we try and think creatively and broadly about what kind of tactics we can use. One of my favorite bands has a song that says, "Direct action, like every good child care worker knows, is immediate, appropriate, and offers honesty, inspiration, and alternatives." And I think that that's one thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about what kind of direct action you're doing, is that you're being creative, that you're being truthful, and that you're putting forward what you need and what kind of alternatives there are to what is otherwise being offered. So here's a really good example of a direct action, which is just a giant banner hang, which no one who's legal is kind of the master of in the city. And this one is outside of a bank, and it was at a demonstration around the economy, and it says capitalism is broken. And one of the things in OCAP that we believe is that capitalism breeds poverty, and it needs poverty to exist. It creates poverty. So if we're an anti-poverty organization, by rights we have to be an anti-capitalism organization, because we cannot support capitalism in any form and have any belief that we won't have poverty. And we also don't, while reducing the numbers of poor people is really good, that poverty reduction schemes that just take the people that basically play with statistics a lot of the time, rework the poverty line and say there are fewer poor people, or help the least poor of the poor people who still need a lot of help and income and housing, but take the least poor of those people and move them just slightly above the poverty line. That's really unacceptable. What we need is an equitable distribution of resources, and we need income and housing for everyone. So just one example, in Regent Park, in 1995, Mike Harris cut welfare by 21.6%. So a fifth of people's income overnight was just gone. And what one organization did was they looked at Regent Park, which is a very changed neighborhood now, but at the time was the poorest neighborhood in the city, and still is one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city, even though they've been actively working to force poor people out of that neighborhood. They looked at Regent Park, and they looked at Rosedale, which is the very, very rich neighborhood right just north of Regent Park. And $1 million a month was going out of Regent Park through the welfare cut into Rosedale through tax cuts. So that's a really clear example of the way that tax cuts are really benefit the rich and on the backs of the poor. And all of the money that rich people are getting is being gotten on our backs. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind, and the way that the system is built to ensure that that continues to happen. We can't even see that. So this is a demonstration outside of a drop-in in Toronto, and I can't see it, I'm sorry, but basically, I can't remember what it is. It's kind of an old picture. Yeah, it's St. Christopher's House, but I don't know what it is, but I think it's around stopping Tory cuts. And it's around workfare, actually. So one of the things that the city also did was trying to force people on social assistance to work for sub-minimum wage, like really sub-minimum wage, in order to be able to get social assistance. That still exists in some ways, that if you are on social assistance and you want extra money for volunteering, you have to for transportation, you have to work in order to get it or volunteer somewhere. But the government was never able to implement it the way that it planned to, which was forcing every single person on social assistance not to be able to get any money unless they were working somewhere for like $3 an hour. They were never able to do that, specifically because people in the city and across the province fought back against that policy. And that was a really important victory for poor people here, to ensure that that didn't happen. And that's both really important for people on social assistance, but it's also really important for everyone who's a worker, because putting in this mass of people who are really precariously employed, have no rights, and are making $3 or $4 an hour means that all of the workers then, they're made more vulnerable. Their wages can be cut more easily. They can be just replaced with people working on workfare. This is an example of a case action we did with a bad landlord who scammed somebody for their damage deposit, and we went down and we got the person their money. Here's another one, just us going into an office and refusing to leave until we got what we needed. This, I believe, was an immigration case that we were trying to get somebody's status who was going to be deported. And one of the things that we've also done around social assistance stuff is that we fought very hard for a raise in the rates for a very long time, and 1% is like $5 to $10 on someone's check, and it just isn't enough. The gap from the Harris cut to now with inflation is 55% people have lost since 1995 who are on social assistance. So that's how much people actually need just to be put back at 95 levels, which actually still isn't sufficient. So one of the things we did was we looked at all of the policies in welfare law and saw that there was this policy around special diet. And what it was $250 a month if someone got a doctor to sign a letter saying that they needed a specific diet. So we started getting doctors to meet up with people in social assistance, writing these notes, getting people the money. It grew and grew and grew to the point that we directly signed up 10,000 people for the special diet. At every step of the way, the more people found out about it, the more the city and the province would work to try and cut it. They did kind of everything they could to get rid of the money that people were finally accessing to be able to get food. And it meant the difference for people that I know who had been homeless for 10, 15 years, were finally housed and could keep their housing because they didn't have to choose between rent and food. And the province announced in the budget last year, I believe the year before last, that they were going to kill the special diet. And effectively they couldn't do that because of the resistance, again, that poor people posed around this benefit. They did, however, make everyone re-qualify for it, and they cut a bunch of the diets out, and they cut some of the money. A few of the diets got more money, but they cut some of the money. And so before, if you had cancer, you get $75 a month for food, and then if you lost more than 10% of your body weight, you get $240. So it still wouldn't be the full amount, right? You've lost a huge amount of weight, you're really sick, you've got cancer, you still don't get the full amount. You have to have another condition to get the full amount. But we fought very hard for people to get as much money as they could. Now, if you have cancer, you don't get any money just if you have cancer. That's not okay. You have to lose a huge amount of your body weight to be able to get money. So what it means is that people have to be a lot sicker before they can access food money to try and stay healthy. But we've continued to fight to try and get people the special diet, both through demonstrations and through clinics. And this is right the day after Dwight Duncan announced that they were killing the budget. He spoke live on television, on TVO, and we got into the audience and shut down the show and told him that it was completely unacceptable. And that was the start of the campaign to try and save the special diet. This is us occupying the Liberal Party headquarters, again, to try and save the special diet and to raise the rates. And in the end, with the special diet, in 2003, $6 million was being spent in the province on the special diet. And by 2010, it was $200 million. So that's $194 million that, because groups like OCAP educated people about the diet, hooked people up with practitioners to get the diet, and then backed people up when they were being illegally refused it. $194 million that went into the pockets of poor people. So that's one thing, that like thinking creatively and using a wide variety of different tactics can really win really, really important things for people in their daily lives. And another practice that we do often is squatting, which is just taking over abandoned buildings and turning them into housing. And this is the Pope squat, which is the longest squat that we've ever held, which became housing for hundreds of people, but in the long term, for 4 months, housing for about 12 or 15 people. But a number of the buildings that we've tried to take over and been evicted from have then later been turned into social housing or some other form of housing. So this is another building that was later then converted into housing. We also do things like tent cities or Safe Park to create a safe place for homeless people to be able to sleep, because they're being harassed so much on the streets and can't have a safe place to sleep. So I'm out of time and I'm just going to leave it there. Oh, really, really quickly, one other thing is that we went to Loblaws. We said, look, the government isn't giving people the food they need, so a group of people from OCAP went to Loblaws, stole a bunch of food, distributed it in Regent Park, and then sent a bill to the McGuinty government saying that they owed Loblaws $3,500, and because that was the down payment. We've done other things like shut down the eviction mill. The Ontario Rental Housing Tribunal refused to allow evictions happen for the time that we shut it down. So I will stop it there, but I'm happy to talk to folks about it more after. Thank you.